Yeah.
So we're here with Mike Napier for our new mini-series called Tornado Tales, and it's just basically going to be about past guests and maybe some new ones sharing a brilliant story from their time as a pilot on a nav on all different types and variants of the Tornado. And I'm sure many of our viewers already recognise Mike, a former Tornado GR1 pilot and now prolific author. But Mike, can you share a brilliant story with our viewers that stands out in your mind from flying the Tornado GR1?
Well, I can certainly try to do that. And mine goes back to the sort of late 80s, probably sort of 87, I think, probably summer 87, when I was based out in Bruggen in Germany. Now, most of our flying, routine flying, was around the low-flying system in Germany itself. So taking into account the sort of, pretty much, let's say, 1 hour 45 sorties, with quite a lot packed into that time, actually, because there was lots of army stuff out there in the out in the field. There were missile sites, there were other aircraft flashing around. There were always fighters out at the PI and mast to try and bounce you on the way past. So it was a busy time. And thinking about it, by the time you take into account sort of taking leave and various other little bits and pieces that you had, duties you had to do, and the number of times that you climbed into airplanes and they didn't work, which happened frustratingly often, you probably flew about sort of every other day. Once a day, every other day, if you like. But in the summertime, we used to go to our armament practice camp, APC, and that was placed in Sardinia, in Decimumanu, which is just sort of the central sort of southern bit of Sardinia. And the reason we went there was because there was a fantastic range out on the west coast at Capofrasca, and there was a large base there which was run as a quadrinational training base. So try and get to that later on. But run by the Italians, by the Germans, by the Americans, and ourselves, plus various sort of guest people who'd appear every now and then, such as the French. And we'd go there for our APC every year, and that would be 2 weeks. And it was like a boys' own adventure Mediterranean holiday. You go there and you'd be flying every day, sometimes twice a day. The sorties were just really quick. They were 45 minutes, so 10 minutes to get to the range, a frantic 20-minute range pattern, and then back again, all in formations of 4 aircraft, a quick debrief, quick cup of coffee, turn around, and off you went and did it all over again. It was absolutely fantastic. In the evening, we'd go along to the either out for a pizza or down to the Quadrinational Club, which was the Italian officers club. And this was the place. Now think back to the mid 1980s. Nobody used to go to coffee bars or anything like that, like we've got in this country. So it was the first time that I had ever seen such a thing as a cappuccino. And so we'd go there, and much to the disgust of all the Italian officers who obviously didn't drink such things in the evening and thought only girls drank them during the daytime, and the poor Italian conscripts who had to produce it, you pitch up there and say, right, well, there are 5 cappuccinos, please, and 5 sambucas. And then the round would go around. So by the time you got to bed that evening, there was no chance of sleeping because you're full of caffeine. And as you lay on the bed with your eyes wide open, because he'd also drank lots of sambuca, the room would start spinning slowly around. So the next morning, you'd wake up with sort of bright red eyes, having clung to your bed all night, trying not to fall off, and off you go for this harsh day of having played hard, of working hard on the range. And this particular morning, I pitched up with my red-rimmed eyes to the ops block to find that I was leading the range, and we were going to go and we had, I think, 8 bombs. So we we're going to drop 8 bombs, and then we we're going to go and strafe with the 27mm cannon, which the Tornado had. And I was briefing all this, and I was fairly new to it all still, and it was all, I was a bit behind the drag curve. But then the squadron weapons guy came in and said, "Hey, Mike, we've just got clearance to use the laser as a rangefinder for the strafe. I want you to do it." And they would say, "Oh my God, how do we do that?" So myself and my nav, who was a very experienced old chap, well, he's probably about half as old as I am now, but I thought he was ancient at the time, we had a quick chat about what we do. So myself and the Beagle went off and led our formation to the range, and it all started very well, actually. Into the range. "Hi, Frasca, this is us, Paris. We're for dive bombs and level bombing and strafe." So they go, "Oh, okay, clear to join the Paris." is for a bombing left range, left pattern, for strafe, left range, right pattern. Okay, so off we went, dropped 8 bombs, and now we're into the strafe pattern. So for this, the first thing that you do is to do a safety height run, which is basically an excuse to wire the range hut, but it was to check that they got the minimum height correctly marked. So you go whistling past at not very high. But the two things you had to do were firstly to check that the strafe panels were up and were good, and secondly that there was no shipping in the bay that was beyond, because the range was on the headland. So just make sure that there was no boats on the far side. So you go whistling past, you check the panels, pull up, and the immortal call was no sheeps in the bay. And they go, okay, no sheeps in the bay, and off you went. So having called no sheeps in the bay, I headed off downwind, leading my team, and tipped in for the first pass. So in the Tornado, you came round the corner, you dropped the nose down over banks, there's a fixed cross in the gun sight, put the fixed cross somewhere up near the target, and check your dive angle, more than 12 degrees, yes, that's good. Now you're going to call that you're in hot, so Paris 1, in hot, pull the throttle back to halfway, so you're not accelerating down the dive. And then the switches, because the Tornado switchology was a nightmare. You've already selected the guns, probably downwind, so now you've got the mass, the late arm, and the stick top trigger to make live. And now you're coming down to about 1,500 meters, and just a matter of pulling up the fixed cross and getting the range, the pipper, which is where the bullets are going to go, to sit on the strafe panel. And as you're coming in, you're waiting for 1,200 meters, then BRT, then recover, 4G pull up, 15 degrees nose up, off hot, switches, MAS, late arms, trigger top, all safe. And then at that stage, the guy would come back to you and would give you a score, because these things were scored on a thing called a Kusa store. It was a microphone that was right at the base of the target, and it counted the number of shots past it by the shock that came off them. So you said, okay, 6 hits, and then downwind. So on this particular day, I came in, switches, check dive angle, fixed cross up near the strafe panel, back on the power, switches hot, clear hot, down, and exactly that, squeeze, recover, off hot, nothing. Number 2 comes home, Paris 2, in hot, nothing. Paris 2, off dry. Paris 3, in hot, silence, nothing. Paris 3, off dry. Actually, there are only 3 of us. We'd started in the traditional way of a Tornado formation, of starting with 4, but obviously somebody had gone US on the way, just 3 of us. So it's my turn now. I come round, and the same thing, drop down, cross just in the vicinity of the strafe panel, throttles back, switches, in hot, and the next thing I hear is this screen saying, Paris lead, you have killed 2 horses! At which moment, yes, in hot, recovered. But of course, the Beagle by this stage was absolutely pissing himself with laughter, trying to work out. So I was going, oh my God, what's happened? Everything like. And again, every single call thereafter, all you could hear in the background was people just laughing as they came down. And we couldn't really work out what it was. And we came back, actually, and I was waiting to get my bollocking, because I had actually had quite a few screw-ups at that stage. So I arrived, and there was a boss on the flight, and I thought, oh my God, what's happened? And in fact, he was waiting for the Italian station commander to have a glass of fizz to celebrate the fact that we just used the laser for the first time. At that stage, I don't think he knew that I killed 2 horses. We then got the film and started clicking through, and I've never seen a debrief, the senior room is so full, everyone was going click, trying to see where these things were, and we never did see them. And the only thing that we could think was that, first of all, the harmonisation was slightly out on the on the site, so the rounds actually weren't going where the pipper was saying they should be going. But also that we discovered a glitch with the laser rangefinder, and it was actually giving a wrong range. So actually, the bullets probably were not going anywhere close to where I was aiming them. Not that I was probably aiming them that carefully, but there we go. But yes, so we never did see what happened. We did hear later that it wasn't that it was a fairly frequent event, and actually the locals really enjoyed it, because they got some fresh horse meat to have with their spaghetti that evening. But that basically was what happened when I managed to kill 2 horses at Decimilano.
I mean, okay, I'm going to rewind a bit here, Mike. That's a crazy story. Were these wild horses, or were they farmers' horses, or what?
I think that they were wild horses, and obviously the area where the range was. I mean, a bit actually, to be honest, a bit probably like the UK ranges where there are seals and things that sort of tend to beach and things around where the where the target's on the beach. But out there, of course, there are these wild horses, and there was this lovely grass that nobody went near for good reason. And so I think they thought, oh, we'll have some of that nice grass, little realising that the loonies were on the loose, firing bullets at them. So as far as I know, that they were kind of wild ponies. That were none the wiser.
And when did your bollocking come? When did that happen? When you landed? It wasn't straight away, obviously. When did that come?
Yes, I got away with that. I thought, I got away with that one. Well, it was actually when we went through the film, and it click, 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 and then everybody was so disappointed they couldn't see these horses because that would have been such a fantastic picture. But again, it was pointed out to me that I should really have noticed that the range was wrong, didn't look right, because you're used to seeing it. There was it came up as a little sort of semicircle on the. Up in the sight, but actually, again, just by looking at the size of the target, should have made me know that I was either in or out of it. And I can't remember which one it was now. That it wasn't correct. But of course, I was maxed out completely. I didn't know what was going on. So shoot it, off we go. So that's the thing. So if you let these inexperienced people loose with things they don't really understand, it can all go horribly wrong.
Especially after like 5 coffees and 5 sambucas.
Well, that probably didn't help very much. Yeah, that's true.
But so isn't there a famous picture? I think, don't you have? Is it 2 horses on the side of the canopy? Is that the one you sent me?
That's right. Because although the boss didn't really hadn't known what had happened, of course the ground crew. I mean, news travels fast, and the ground crew never let you forget anything. So I think those horses were there by the time I got down the steps and sort of had a quick chat and looked around, and there they were, these 2 dado horses underneath the cockpit. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, that's the photograph of me taking photographs.
Great story, but I can't imagine that happening now these days. There'd be so much inquiry, probably.
Well, you're right, and it's amazing how much things. I wouldn't say were swept under the table, but it was realised that people don't get things right. That people do learn from their mistakes, and people need to. I was going to say, if you don't hurt anybody, or horses, then then it's you need to make mistakes and learn from them. So so that I did. I have to say, I did learn from that one.
Well, cheers for sharing that story with us, Mike, and being the first guest on Tornado Tales. But we also have to talk about you being an author and your books. So can you tell us a bit about them, how many you've wrote, and what have you got coming up in the future?
Yeah, I can. And sorry to use this opportunity as a sort of self-promotion, gratuitous. But yeah, so actually at the moment I've done 12 books. The latest one is, I'm just going to copy it. I have one here I prepared earlier. There you go. This one, Flashpoints. And now that is, it's an account really of the various of 8 different campaigns that occurred during the Cold War years. And in fact, I guess some of your guests or recent guests would have participated in them, whether they've been the Arab-Israeli wars, the India-Pakistan wars, the Falklands, all in there. Also, interestingly, the Iraq-Iran war, which is a really interesting one. So this is a book that covers all of those things. At the moment, in preparation, I've got 3 on the go at the moment, would you believe? Looking at for Osprey. One's on the strategic bombing campaign over Korea. Which again is quite an interesting one, because it covers not only the B-29s doing their stuff over North Korea. I mean, they flattened the place fairly quickly, but then discovered there was lots of other things to, the Koreans were so and the Chinese were so ingenious at fixing things and making this happen that the bombers were kept going for a considerable length of time, and also then tactical aircraft started getting involved in what might be called strategic campaigns. One really interesting one actually was there were a whole lot of hydroelectric power systems set up by the Japanese when they were in charge of Korea in the sort of 1920s and 30s. Amazing sort of, you get these reservoirs and they drilled through the water table to the mountains on the other side, and then you end up with, I think, 4 or 5 sort of power stations, right? So the water would run through one power station and take the electricity off, and then run down another one, sort of, down another 1,000 feet through the mountain and carry on all the way down. And they had a simultaneous strike on all of these one day. So that's one of them. I'm doing one on the Harrier in action, GR7 and GR9, which is again covers their time in the Balkans, Iraq, Afghanistan, and also one on talking on Afghanistan on the campaigns in Afghanistan. So that covers the a little bit of history, so covering the RAF involvement in 1928, and then on to the Soviets in the 1980s, and the obviously the NATO or US NATO stuff in the 2010s. So those should all come out next year. The one that I'm really excited about, I'm sorry to hop on about, is this one here, Tornado in the Tides, which is now out in paperback in all its glory, and that's my own kind of memoir. And oddly enough, the reason I had to delay seeing it is because I saw a mate of mine from back old Squadron days. I keep reading your books. It just takes me back to how it was. And apparently they were reading some last night, which I was quite flattered by. But, if people are interested in what it's like flying airplanes, I have to say, although I say it myself, that's a good way to get a bit of background stuff. And you can read all about killing horses there as well.
There you go. One thing I want to ask you, Mike, before we wrap up is, how do you decide what to write about? Do you pick it because you're interested in it, or do you pick it because you think the public might, or is there a bit of both there?
There's a bit of both, and actually, there's actually a third factor, which is what the publisher wants to do as well. And things have come. In fact, there's four things, because I was also have been working very closely with an editor guy who's who's almost like an agent almost as well, who comes up with ideas. So he comes up with ideas saying, this would be a great idea. The publisher says, yeah, we'll do that. And then if I'm interested, I go, yeah, I'll do that. A couple of things I've thought, I'm interested myself, let's do that. And then persuade the publisher. And some of the other ones, particularly the kind of Osprey campaign ones, the publishers got back to me and said, oh, we want a book on so-and-so, would you be interested in doing it? So all those different things. Obviously, from the publisher's perspective, they want to do something that people are interested in. From my perspective, as you say, it's what I'm interested in, and it does get to be on the couple of occasions when I've done or started doing stuff that I felt not really interested. They've become a bit of a bum, I have to say, a bit of a chore, rather than an enjoyable hobby, which it ought to be. Really.
Yeah, it must be really nice being in a position where you can pick and choose almost as well.
It's fantastic. Yes, it really is. I'm very lucky, and the difficulty is, one of the editors has just come up with another idea. Would you like to do this? I'm thinking, I don't know if I probably kind of would, but yeah. And then I'm thinking, well, do I really want to? But so it is nice to have that choice, really, and also to be asked to do things is very flattering. But generally speaking, it's good fun. I enjoy it, and I'm a closet anorak, so I enjoy it really as well. I enjoy finding out about things, and like you, it's great to talk to to be in touch with people, and certainly for Flashpoints, I was in touch with a number of people that you've spoken to who were who gave me some good information, particularly on the Indian Air Force side of things, the Pakistan Air Force side of things. So really interested.
Brilliant stuff. So where can we find the books online, Mike? And then are you on Twitter or Facebook? Do you have a website, anything out there?
I have got a website. I've not done much with it for ages, but I am quite regularly on Twitter these days, my newfound thrill thing. So it's Michael N. Books on Twitter. There's bits and pieces there. The books you can get through the publishers, which in this case it's Pen and Sword Books on this one. The others are all Osprey, and they've got their own company websites. But all of them are also there on Amazon for those who are interested as well.
Brilliant stuff. Well, Mike, thanks very much for coming on the first episode of Tornado Tales and sharing that story. And if you like horses, this is not the one for you, but go and check out Mike's books. I'll link everything in the description. But Mike, thanks again.
Yeah, very welcome. It's great to talk to you again, Mike.
Cheers.